It is the Flow Friday night sports show, and this has been a long time coming, Flowman. I'm looking forward to catching up with our next guest. It's almost like getting the band back together for me.
It certainly is. Well, Richard Pacer Murphy. If I call him Richard, then he thinks it's his mother talking to him.
Yeah.
So Pacer, as he's known right across the Eyre Peninsula, joins us to talk about Eyre Peninsula football. Hey, how are you, Pacer?
I'm good, gentlemen. How you going? Thanks for having me on.
Good to have you on, mate. Now, we should mention your official job title. It's with SA Community Football. What is it you actually do for them, Pacer?
So I'm the EP Football Ops Coordinator over in the EP, so just help things along over here. And it's been a pretty turbulent, challenging few weeks, but we're getting there now, so it's good. It's good to have football back.
Going to have it back after Easter, but prior to Easter 2021 will probably go down as one of the most tumultuous times. I mean, it did start back in 2020 when at the end of the 2019 season, a meeting was called at Woodner, Pacer, and it did go into the detail of a future Eyre Peninsula football and some zones that might come out of it. But effectively, clubs began to move and decisions were then taken in Midwest particularly, and ultimately we get a really different landscape that comes in 2021.
Yeah, definitely, and you're spot on there. Certainly Woodner have been flagging for a couple of years, I guess, up in that league about some issues they were having around numbers and volunteers and things, and likewise Central Eyre, I think, have always been upfront about their possibility about moving east instead of west. So obviously those clubs had got their heads together and done a bit of work during last year, and ultimately formed their merger and to form that new club, Central Eyre United. But I think it's really, really important though to point out that merged club, they certainly went to the meeting with Midwest with the sole intent of wanting to continue in the Midwest Footy League, and there was a couple of conditions around that, and that was based on their members' request to wanting to be able to play competitive football in all grades. And just I guess the cold hard reality is there was three other clubs that couldn't commit to that, and hence their decision to apply to go into Eastern Eyre. So there was potential for Midwest still to run as a 4-team league, but obviously that's all changed. We've had a couple of other clubs, or all four clubs, take different avenues now, and unfortunately, that's been the demise of Midwest Footy League. But the other really important factor, it's been club driven. I think people have got to really understand this has been club driven, and I don't think there would be a person on Eyre Peninsula that's happy about the Midwest Football League its demise, and there wouldn't be a person in the state that would be happy about it. There's a lot of history and all those sorts of things, but cold hard reality is that the numbers are a real problem to sustain a 16 league in that area.
All right, well, that brings us to really the nitty-gritty of what we need to talk about now, which is what's next. If I take you back even before the infamous Midwest Minnipa meeting, and we go back even before that, last year I spoke with Peter Linder, your boss at SA Community Football. We were talking about a bit of a blueprint for what might be the case for Eyre Peninsula football. Now, Pacey, you and I have been chatting about EP football for, we've known each other for over a decade. So we've been talking about the possibilities and the ins and outs sort of off the record and just as mates for that long. This is not a new concept, what has been put up, but it's certainly the first time that SA Community Football have really driven it hard, and that is a look at the actual league structure on EP. Is that right?
Yeah, it is right. And again, it's really important to know that community football, their SANFL, are there as a supporting body and want the best for football and netball for that matter on EP. And I guess one of the things that is a concern to them is 4-team leagues, because they are very vulnerable. If one team drops out, then you physically can't. Well, I guess you could, but it makes it very difficult to play with a 3-team league. So. And there's a lot of data out there that points to population declines and struggles with numbers, and just as importantly, volunteers. I think that probably gets missed a lot of the time. There are a lot of clubs that struggle with volunteers to run clubs. It burns people out. So the model they put forward at that meeting in Woodner was to go to 3 zones on Eyre Peninsula. Now, it was absolutely no intent and never any discussion about the demise of any clubs. So it was just a matter of, this is a model that we think would be would be great and could work. But again, ultimately, that's going to be driven by the stakeholders, which is the clubs and their members. So community football, the SANFL, aren't going to come in with a heavy fist and stamp it on the table and say, this is what you will do. I mean, clearly it's a negotiation process, and I guess we've seen part of that sort of puzzle fall into place, I guess, with what's happened with Midwest and the movement of some of the clubs and what happens next. Well, I think there'll be a lot be determined this year and how successful some of these moves are. But the other key point is that October 31 this year, there will be a review of all the changes that have occurred. So they've only been rubber stamped up until that date.
Sure.
So there'll be a lot of discussion and a lot of negotiation, I guess, with clubs and just seeing how it all fits and seeing how it all works. And I guess we've got into a situation as well where two leagues in Great Flinders and Eastern Eyre have gone from even-numbered associations to odd-numbered associations, which is absolutely fine as well. But it does prevent a few other challenges with buys, and one of the key mantras, I guess, for the SANFL is about participation. They want as many people playing the game and playing as much football and netball as possible. So clearly with those buys in place, it does have a bit of an impact in reducing some games, which is a bit of a concern. It's not a deal breaker, but it's certainly a concern.
Mate, I think you talked about the three-zone structure there, and that's what I wanted to come back to for a moment, because I think the moves that have been made around Centrally United, we've seen the West Coast Hawks and Wirraloo go up into what is now Western Eyre. Does that actually, the Western Eyre competition, formerly Far West, that's effectively one of your zones, right? Would that be right in saying that?
Yeah, I think it's fair to say. I think I was going to use the word the safest model out of all the moves at the moment is probably that one, but when I say it's probably the one that makes the most geographical sense at the moment. So both those clubs are going to have reduced travel, I guess, going into that league. I mean, it had a bigger impact on the Sejuna end with clubs like Western United, who've got it obviously based out at Penong, have got to do some more travelling, as do all those clubs up there. But they were unanimous in their decision to accept those clubs and expand that league, and probably so, I guess. I mean, I guess they're sitting there as a 4-team association and feel a bit like a sitting duck. So them to go to 6 teams is good for them. I guess now it's just about what happens underneath that. I wouldn't expect there'd be too much impact or change. I mean, if anything, there may be an addition to that league, but that's just going to be stakeholder driven, and it's going to depend on how successful certain things are. And I guess you don't have to be Einstein to work out what I'm talking about there, and that's the Elliston Western Districts alignment. So, and those two clubs, there's a lot of empathy for both those clubs. Just geographically, they are severely challenged. So, and that's never been lost on anybody. Like Elliston, are stuck in the middle, I guess, of where they could go. So the fact that they've been able to form that alignment and Great Flinders have been able to accept them is a massive tick, and it's a win, certainly for this year, and important is getting people back playing football and netball. But whether it's the right long-term sustainable model, who knows? I mean, we're just going to have to ride that out this year and again, continue discussions with those two clubs and the leagues involved and see where it shakes out. Okay,
Pacey, you've mentioned netball. Netball and aligning them into football. I mean, a lot of folk in the country say that netball's following football. It doesn't down in Port Lincoln. How do you see this evolving in terms of the netball competitions, and have you got the support of Netball SA for these sorts of structural changes?
Yeah, so Netball SA have been, as I understand, I mean, I don't want to speak for Netball SA because it's not I'm employed by, and I don't have a lot of dealings with them. But the feedback I get from netball presidents on EP is that they've got support of Netball SA. Their governance structure is very different to the football side of things. They're quite happy for netball associations on EP to go out and make their own decisions. But in general, consultation between clubs and leagues with their netball clubs and association on the EP has been strong, and look, all clubs. I certainly wouldn't say that it's been smooth sailing for everybody, because I'm sure it never is. But in general, the football and netball clubs have worked really close together and have got common ground, and with all the decisions they've made.
Pacer, you mentioned the zones we talked about, the Western Eyre zone being one of the potential three that SA Community Football are looking at. That leaves two more to be formed. And how do you go about doing that with what would be Great Flinders, your home association, a proud league, the Maroons? You've got Port Lincoln in there with those issues lining up football, netball that the Flowman touched on earlier. And then you've got Eastern Eyre, who for the first time in a little while now are back to a really viable 5-team competition. I could see some resistance and some pushback maybe at getting those last two zones signed off on. Are you hearing that? Are you finding that? Or is it going to be a little bit easier than we think?
It's a really hard one to answer, Reg. So I think you're probably on the money that there is a little bit of resistance, but it's just a matter of everyone being upfront and open. I mean, we think back pre-COVID that Great Flinders and Eastern Eyre held a meeting, which I was at, and the meeting was really good. It was open and it was honest, and the final outcome of that meeting was that the two leagues would like to continue discussions, and I guess then COVID come along and it all took a bit of a back seat. But I've got no doubt that there'll be some communications between those two leagues throughout this year. Now, whether that transpires into anything happening, who knows? But again, Great Flinders just need to keep open minds about it, as do Eastern Eyre. And then you've got the Port Lincoln factor. I know for a fact that Port Lincoln are certainly going to work very hard to investigate and look at the opportunities for football and netball alignment down there, because I don't think I would be wrong in saying there wouldn't be a club up country that would probably wish to go into the Port Lincoln Football League without netball alignment, and that's not a criticism or a threat or a slur or anything like that. It's just that it's way too important to country leagues where they've got football and netball together for families, husbands, wives, boyfriends, girlfriends, all that sort of stuff, and it's one of the draw cards that keeps players coming into that league. So I would imagine that until there is some alignment, that any move from a country club would probably be off the cards. Not saying it's entirely off the cards, but it would make it really difficult for that to happen. So, and as to whether Port Lincoln football and netball can get that alignment together, I know there's a lot of people down there that want to absolutely have a good hard look at it and see if it is achievable and possible. And it certainly requires some infrastructure type changes and that as well, I'm sure, and a lot of other stuff. But it's a positive that people are actually talking about it.
That's true. To finish up with one last question for you, mate, and I've got to ask this one because I think of the number of people that have been in the gun. There's been a few from various clubs, and it's an emotional time when a league folds and clubs' futures are up in the air. But, I've copped some stick for some of the articles that I've written across the last couple of months. I know that there have been members of other clubs, committee members that have copped some stick, and I know you've been in the gun as well, along with other members of SA Community Football. How much of it do you put down to emotion? How much of it do you put down to frustration for some of these clubs who, unfortunately, their very viability has been threatened by all of these changes? And how much of it is actually real, that is feedback that we need to all take a listen to?
I think a lot of it's down to emotional, those sorts of things. I mean, it is a very emotional subject. I mean, nobody wants to see leagues go down. Nobody wants to, and it's all down to change, Regs. I mean, change is a very difficult thing for people to adapt to. And but as I said earlier, the cold hard reality, and I'm not going to shy away from this comment, and I've said it openly at their meetings, that the ability to maintain 6 clubs in its entirety up in that league was getting very, very difficult. And it's not just within the Midwest Football League. There was a number of leagues, in fact every league across EP, that is facing challenges around numbers, and there's clubs in Great Flinders that are going to struggle with numbers in certain grades this year. There's clubs in Port Lincoln that are going to struggle. So it's not a negative comment, it's just a real comment, it's just reality. And there's a lot of data around that, and also the facts are there that people are struggling to fill certain grades. So obviously it has been a very emotional time, but I think the real pleasing thing now is that people have, particularly those clubs that have gone into other leagues, they've got a home now, and they've got an ability for their kids and their seniors to be going out and playing sport, which I think, given the year we had last year, is just super important. So we're really rapt that everyone's got that opportunity, and particularly for Western Districts and Elliston to go into Great Flinders. Now, as I said before, it may not be the perfect solution, and who knows how it pans out. It could have a really positive outcome, and we hope it does. But what I can tell you is the excitement of clubs and people around the EP at the moment is just up and about. We're getting feedback about people are coming out the closet to get to trainings and supporting their clubs as well. I mean, I was up at Wirral the other week, and there was a massive roll-up up there with football and netball and a lot of excitement, and likewise with Central Eyre United, with Woodner and Central Eyre. It's East and Eyre up and about and buzzing, and there's a lot of positive vibes around from Great Flinders as well, and obviously Districts and Elliston are really excited about the opportunity they've got in front of them. So I think everyone's just really, really rapt to have footy back, and looking forward to it kicking off post-Easter.
Oh, yes, I think we all are. And, Pacer, it's been good to get your views as we cover off on Eyre Peninsula football. And you look forward to getting out and watching Tumpy Bay, and we'll look forward to getting out and seeing some games of footy too, and catching up in the meantime. Pacer Murphy, who is the SANFL Community Football spokesperson for Eyre Peninsula Football, thanks for joining us.
Good on you, boys. Thanks for your time.